March ended yesterday, and I played games a bunch throughout the month. So as always, until it isn't, I'm going to talk about them for a little while. So let's go. The title I put most of my time into this March was Cyberpunk 2077. I started playing it near the end of last year, but got busy with other games and other things, so I took a bit of time away from it. When I last talked about it on this channel, I had played for about 5 hours and was right before the end of the prologue, which is to say, back then, I really had no idea what the game was actually going to be about. I did find Night City to be captivating, the characters to be compelling, and the gameplay to be engaging, but frankly, I had seen nothing yet. Night City is so much more sprawling and detailed than I ever could have imagined, and one thing I found to be amazing is that it is traversable in so many different ways. Sure, most of your travel is going to be in a vehicle. I opted to use the motorcycle to get most places, and even though I hated driving in first person while in a car, I absolutely adored it while on a bike. But it isn't just limited to that. You can also jump and dash around so much more of the city than seems feasible. There were a bunch of times where I jump up to fire escapes and use them to scale to the top of very tall buildings, and while there isn't a great reason to do this other than to do it, it made the city feel more like an actual place, and V like an actual person within it. In general, I really like V as a character. While there are ways to customize your V, no matter what, there are certain personality traits tied to them, and I like when RPGs do this sort of thing. I find it hard when a protagonist is a completely blank slate, and I much prefer when I'm making choices as an established figure. I love the dynamic between V and Johnny, and just how present it is throughout the game. Given that he's played by Keanu Reeves, I expected Johnny to be a much smaller part, mostly just showing up in the main story, but he pops up everywhere, making everything you do, whether it be a small gig or a more substantial side mission, feel like it is tied in some way to the central conflict. And as the relationship between V and Johnny is the core of the story, having Johnny be a part of everything creates so many chances to examine the connection between them. The cast beyond these two is also incredible. Judy, Panam, Rogue, Vic, Takamura, they are all just really likable. I even found myself calling a lot of characters while riding around Night City, which helped pass the time when traveling, and it was a big part in me pretty much never using fast travel. In general, I felt like I was immersed in the role-playing of V in a way I never really have been with a game before. I just felt like I was a part of it. The gameplay itself has so much versatility to it, and to be honest, I probably went with one of the more boring builds by being a hacker. I'd hoped it would lead to the types of shenanigans you'd find in an immersive sim, but it definitely only touches the edges of that. Regardless, I still had a lot of fun using quick hacks to get an advantage and then going in guns blazing to take people out. At some point, I'm sure I will replay it and probably do a katana focused build or a knife throwing build, as I had fun messing around with those near the end of my playthrough and would love to dive deeper into those systems. I also played Phantom Liberty, and everything I've said so far about the base game applies to that as well, and it may even do a lot of it better. Alex, Songbird, and Reed are all just so good. The writing and spectacle in Phantom Liberty is next level. CD Projekt Red has continued their streak of not missing when it comes to expansion content. If anyone is curious, and I'm going to speak in code here, so this will mean nothing to those of you who haven't played either the base game or the DLC, for Phantom Liberty, I got the King of Wands ending, and for the base game, I got the Temperance ending. 2077 pulled me in a way no other title really has. I have felt many different kinds of immersion throughout the years, but this was something new for me. I know its reputation will always be weighed down by its abysmal state at release and the false promises CDPR put forth, but the game that exists now is a special one, and I'm so happy to have finally played it. Then I played Manifold Garden, a first-person puzzler set in an Escher-inspired world where you regularly shift the direction of gravity in order to solve puzzles. When standing next to a surface, you can press right trigger, and that will change it from being a wall to being a floor, and this mechanic is central to pretty much every puzzle in the game. At first, it all felt a bit overwhelming. The architecture, mixed with the ability to turn anything into the ground, gives you so many different things to keep track of, but despite the mind-bending nature of its puzzles and presentation, it is surprisingly intuitive. I imagine it was a nightmare to design, but somehow the developers were able to make the infinite and obscure feel approachable, which truly is amazing. Every time I talk about a puzzle game on this channel, I bring up the puzzle game sweet spot of being challenging enough to get your brain going, but not so hard that you have little to no chance of solving things in a timely fashion or on your own, and this definitely falls into that sweet spot. There are a handful of really solid puzzles, and also the game's aesthetic mixed with the core gravity shifting ability has the power to break your brain just a little bit. It always keeps the wheels turning, even if those wheels are just trying to make sense of what you're seeing, regardless of if you're working on a puzzle or not. It is stimulating both mentally and visually, and I would say it's a must-play for anyone who's a fan of shorter puzzle experiences. It gets in and out in just the right amount of time and explores its core mechanic thoroughly. I'm sure that with a mechanic like this, there are probably countless ways to build unique puzzles around it, but I definitely didn't walk away feeling as if they didn't bring enough to the table. All in all, it's the perfect game for a chill night in that provides a handful of awe-inspiring moments that almost certainly will stick with you for a good while. The other game I played in March was Split Fiction. I've actually never played anything by Hazelight Studios before. I've been saving It Takes Two for a future Gaming for Non-Gamer video that hopefully we get to sometime soon. But as every new game they put out seems to get more acclaim than the last, I was super excited to give Split Fiction a shot, and it did not disappoint. It is simply really fun. I think the strategy of constantly shifting the focus of the gameplay can be a tough one, as it makes it pretty much impossible to explore mechanics to their full capacity, and also may lead to players being pulled out of a section they really like and into one they don't really care for. But of course, the other side of that coin is that no mechanic sticks around long enough to get stale, and even if a player hits a part that they don't vibe with as much, they'll be onto something new pretty quickly. By and large, when playing Split Fiction, I found myself aligning more with the second way of thinking there as opposed to the first. And I think there are a handful of reasons for this. One is that the pace of the game moves so quickly that you don't really have time to think much about the transitions from one world to the next. You're just kind of in it and have to adapt quickly, and I generally found whatever we got thrown into to be about as compelling as wherever we came from, so I rarely felt a lull. Also, the devs did a really good job of scaling each section of the game. The systems they add in the different areas are interesting yet simple, and they really focus on utilizing the various mechanics in as many ways as possible. Had the mechanics of any given zone been more complicated than they were, it probably would have left something to be desired, but I think they went with the right call of going with smaller ideas that could be thoroughly explored in such a short amount of time. The design shows a lot of restraint, and I think that's a hard thing to do when you have such a creative team, so kudos to them. Even though it kind of ends up being just a bunch of different microgames stitched together, it still feels cohesive due to the central narrative, and while it isn't groundbreaking, it is solid and interesting enough to keep everything afloat. Mio and Zoe are good foils to each other, and the general concept of exploring the stories they've written is a really effective way to examine who they are and what's important to them as they take on the greatest evil of all, Amazon. All of its parts blend together well, and it tosses out a constant mix of intriguing and surprising game mechanics that are fun and funny to engage with. If you have a friend or even just someone willing to talk to you, I definitely recommend trying to play it with them. Anyway, that's it. I hope your March was good. I'll see you next time unless I decide to stop doing this. Bye.